All right, so continuing on, let's talk about content. So there's lots of different sort of question words that I'm going to use for basing your content for your project description off of. So what, when, where, who, why, and how. For each of these, I have a list of prompts that are included on your handout. And also we're going to just skim over a few of those within the context of the webinar as well. Some of the prompts I'm going to call like essential to include an answer to in your project description. Others might be essential for some of you, and for some of you, you might leave them out. So it's sort of a grab bag for the rest of them. So under the what category, obviously the first question is essential to address. What does your project entail, right? That absolutely needs to be addressed in your project description. The second is, what are your goals and objectives? And this can mean something like, it's my goal to stage my play. It's my goal to have this novel published. It's my goal to have this series of songs adapted, or whatever it is, or recorded. Or, so that's more on like the professional side of things, or it can be more abstract, like it's my goal to raise awareness about blah, blah, blah. It's my goal to contribute to this community in this way. And those sorts of more abstract goals will fall under the why category as I've outlined it. The why is this important question. So we'll talk a little bit more about that on that slide. What are the main themes of your project? What are the textures? How is it organized? What does this project mean to you and your work? What is the most compelling thing about your art or your project? What would a donor be supporting in supporting your project? And what inspired you to create your project? And those are just some of the prompts. There are more you can peruse on the handout that might, as you brainstorm them, give you some rough content that then you can incorporate into your project description. Who? If this is applicable to you and your project, this is something you should include in your project description. So who is involved? So any partnerships, anyone who's already given you funding for the work should be included here. Any venues that are on board, any other collaborators in the work, all those things should be addressed if that's true of your project. Who is served? So this is often a separate question on applications, in which case you're not going to include it in your project description. But if it's not an extra question, it is an important thing to include. And that is, who's your target audience? And I wanted to just note, we're not going to go super into depth about this, but a lot of times, not a lot of times, sometimes I'll see people say that their artwork or their exhibition or their whatever it is for everyone. There's like young to old, all demographics could, enjoy this or benefit from it. That's probably true. I'm going to be honest, like that's probably true for most of us, that anyone could enjoy it. But that's not what they're asking for. What they're asking for is pretty narrow. So if you had to define narrowly, who is the most jazzed about my work? Who's the most passionate about it? Who could benefit the most? Who am I thinking about when I'm making this? Who do I want to see this? As narrowly you can define that audience is better, right? Make that English. The more narrow, the better. There we go. And that's because the narrower the audience is, the more successful you can be at marketing to them. It might seem like, oh, a grant would want the most people that can benefit from this, but that's not true, because you're not going to have, millions of people come to this, right? You're going to have the people come to it that you effectively market it to, right? So they're wanting a pretty narrow target audience when they ask for audience. It's not the broader the better. It's the narrower the better. All right, why? Why is this a good fit for this grant? In what ways does the project match the interests of the funding organization? I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this because, again, that's the number one reason that proposals are dismissed. So first of all, you have to figure out if your project is actually a good fit for the grant. Don't waste your time if it's not a good fit. I actually looked at some scholarly studies of who wins grants. And there's this one that is actually all about this factor of fit, the fitness of the project to the granting institution. And this is by Karina Stokes, and in the article says, understanding the thinking and values of the grantor is critical to being successful. Too many grant seekers understand only their own beliefs and thus write from a narrow perspective. Success requires granting an interesting account of a project description, or writing an interesting account of a project description in a manner that demonstrates shared values between the project creator or team and the funding source. So you're not only writing about like, this is what I believe, this is why this is important to me, but also this is what you believe, this is what's important to you, right? It's so much stronger of an argument, just putting it like that. It's like, oh, okay, I'm convinced, you know. And it shows that you care about that particular granting organization enough to do your research. So where do you do your research? Well, the criteria for the grant. What sort of words are they using? What are they saying that they want? What are their passions? What's their mission statement? Who has won this grant in the past, and what projects did they create with the grant funds? And then ask yourself, what aspects of my project are going to be the most appealing to the panelists reviewing the application? And hype those up a bit more, spend a little bit more time talking about those aspects. Then the words that are sort of essential, are the most, you think are the most essential in their criteria or their mission statement. Highlight those exact words in your project description and in your cover letter too, maybe even in your artist statement. You sprinkle those words throughout your writings and synonyms. Don't overdo it. You don't want to like be quoting full sentences from their mission statement or from the criteria. And just a few words here and there. And even that, I know some of you kind of feel like you're being pandery when you do that, but you're not. You're actually showing that you care about them enough to align your project with what they want and to sort of tell them, this is why you want my project, because you're this, right? So this is an important process of the grant writing process. Now, again, if there's a separate question asking about fit, put it there. If there's not, put it in your project description. All right, so that's the first why. The second why is a more general, why is it important? Meaning, why does the world need your project? And that can be sort of like, you know, how does it address a current issue or need? How does it solve a problem? How does it fill a need in the community? How does it interact with the community? Or it could be something like, how will it add to the world of your art form? So whether that be visual art, literature, performance, or something more specific, like how does it contribute to the world of abstract painting or something like that? And then again, that why you question, which, as I said, might be addressed in your cover letter better. But if there's no cover letter and you feel like it's an important thing to address, your project description could be the place that you do that. All right, and how? How will the project achieve your goals and objectives? How will you know it achieves the goals or objectives? Sometimes that's called the metrics for success. And that, again, sometimes is its own separate question, separate from the project description. How will this project advance your career? What's it going to do for you personally, professionally? And how does this project relate to your previous work? So these are all things that you might include in your project description.